I never imagined a simple mistake would lead to an unbelievable act of bravery. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started like any ordinary Wednesday, yet a shiver of tension crackled in the air. The morning sun streamed down, but shadows loomed large in my heart. I felt the weight on my shoulders, a heaviness I couldn't shake. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched my phone, the screen flickering with rhythm like my racing pulse. I had promised my sister, Jenna, I'd get the groceries. Just a simple task, a casual exchange. But my head was elsewhere. You see, my mom was in the hospital, and all I could think about were her fading whispers and the sterile smell of antiseptic. I was lost in that world when I made the fatal error. I added a dozen exotic fruit smoothies to the list instead of her medications. It seemed harmless until I saw the subtle shift in Jenna's eyes, fear wrapped around her like a blanket. I could feel a storm brewing within her, the tears that threatened to spill. It wasn't just the groceries, it was the strain on our family. My heart ached knowing how much our mom needed us right then. There was something about that looming silence, the way our breaths intertwined, the desperation was palpable. Mom had always been our rock, battling sickness like a warrior. Now, it was our turn to be strong. Jenna looked at me, her eyes wide, a whirlwind of anger and disappointment. The hospital room felt like a cold, foreign land. I could hear the beeping of machines, the hushed voices of doctors discussing her condition. Was this my fault? Could I have prevented this cascading spiral? As I raced through the dim aisles of the store, each step echoed in my mind. I could see the flickering lights overhead, buzzing like angry wasps. My chest tightened. A simple mistake, and yet, the weight of my choices was suffocating. Suddenly my phone buzzed like an intruder. A notification popped up. Emergency alert, hospital in lockdown due to a security breach. My heart dropped. What did this mean? I spotted Jenna across the parking lot, her face pale, lost in a sea of chaos. A crowd had gathered, uncertainty swirling like a dark cloud. It was then I noticed the shadows moving, the panicked whispers igniting fear in the crowd. Instinct kicked in as that weight became a spark. This was my chance to be brave. But would anyone believe me? I could hear the sirens now, piercing through the panic, a haunting symphony in the distance. My hands were clammy, my breathing erratic. Why did it feel like the world was tipping on its axis? There was a sudden scream, a shattering cry that froze my heart. What was happening at the hospital? Would I have the courage to face the storm? To fight against the shadows? I took a step forward, my heart racing. The question echoed like a heartbeat in my mind, was I ready to confront this chaos? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The chaos swirled around me as I stumbled toward the hospital entrance, each heartbeat pounding painfully against my ribcage. Shadows darted between the crowd, jittery whispers of fear woven with uncertainty. I caught glimpses of confused faces, strangers' eyes wide, mirroring my own panic. All I could think was, what had I unleashed? This was more than just my simple mistake. The stakes had escalated beyond comprehension. As I approached the barrier where the police maintained order, Jenna broke through the throng, panic etching her features. "What are we doing here?" she cried, an edge of desperation in her voice. "Mom!" I choked out, my words barely escaping my trembling lips. She needs us." Jenna's expression shifted subtly, a flicker of understanding beneath the storm of emotions. I could almost see the protective instinct kicking in. "We can't get inside, and we don't know what's happening." She glanced back at the hospital, now cloaked in an ominous aura. "I can't lose her, not like this." I reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. The connection was a lifeline, a tether against the tidal wave of despair. We have to do something, I insisted. We can't just stand here. As if the universe were mocking our resolve, the lights at the entrance flickered like a dying star. The sirens grew louder, drowning out my desperation. I felt like I was in a vortex, being pulled closer and closer to something I couldn't define. There was chaos outside, but inside was our my mind raced. Where could I find answers? My heart despised that I was incapable of fixing my blunder right now, but maybe I could help in other ways. I'll talk to someone, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Stay here, please. Before Jenna could protest, I broke through the throng. A fuzz of adrenaline buzzed in my ears as I approached a uniformed officer, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. Excuse me, I need to know about the lockdown. My mom is in there. I pointed toward the glass doors, my pulse quickening as I thought of her vulnerable and alone inside. The officer glanced at me and then focused back on the chaos unfolding. Ma'am, please step back. We are handling a situation. Handling a situation? I felt the urgency in my chest grow. I need to get her medication. She can't go without it. I was shouting now, my voice rising above the cacophony, a plea to the universe that I could no longer contain. He looked back at me, concern etched into his face. Ma'am, you need to understand this is serious. You can't go in. As he stepped away, a sense of helplessness engulfed me. I was mere inches from salvation yet couldn't touch it. I turned, frantically scanning the crowd for Jenna. I had to find her. I needed her. Just then, an elderly woman stepped forward from the group, her face creased with worry but her eyes softer than the rest. She reached out, her calloused hand finding my arm. Sweetheart, I know it's hard, she said. My granddaughter is in there too. They're going to do everything they can. Her warmth was unanticipated, a small beacon amidst the storm. Thank you, I murmured, momentarily comforted before the reality reasserted itself. My mother was depending on me to be brave, and here I was, spiraling. But just as I turned to seek Jenna once more, the crowd erupted, screams enveloping us like a suffocating fog. Someone darted out of the hospital, torn from their calm demeanor as they stumbled into the mass of people. My breath caught at the sight. The face pale, filled with terror, was unmistakable. Jenna! I shouted, my heart plummeting, but my sister didn't hear me. Her eyes were glued to the figure staggering closer, and I felt my body go cold. It was Nurse Carla, the kind woman who had always cared for Mom. Her breath came harsh as she clutched her arm, blood trickling down, painting her scrubs a deep crimson, a surreal contrast to the sterile white of the hospital she had just escaped. Nurse Carla! I screamed, shock rippling through me, a wave of dread crashing down. What happened? Her eyes, usually so full of warmth, were now glazed over with fear and exhaustion. There was an incident, she gasped, collapsing against the nearest lamppost, gasping. I couldn't. What was happening? The shadows were creeping closer, and I could feel my reality fracturing. My gaze darted between Carla and the doors of the hospital. My mind raced, the questions spiraling out of control. What if this was all my fault? Was my mistake not only failing to get Mom's medication but causing this chaos too? I finally moved towards Carla, holding her steady with a strength I didn't know I had. We need help. I need to know about my mom. But the words slipped off the edge of my tongue, lost in the silence that followed. Just as I was about to scream again, another figure pushed through the crowd. Someone I never expected to see. My father's face and the look in his eyes delivered a jolt of emotion I didn't know I could bear. My throat tightened as my father stumbled closer, the very essence of shock etched deep into his features. He looked older somehow, wearied by burdens I hadn't known he carried. What's happening? He rasped, his voice strained and gravelly, searching for answers like a shipwrecked sailor clinging to a piece of driftwood. I opened my mouth, desperately trying to form the words, yet every time I attempted to explain the chaos that had unfolded, memories of our estranged relationships seeped into the moment, gnawing at my already frayed emotions. I took a breath, struggling to anchor myself in the present. Dad! It's Mom! Something happened at the hospital. The shocks that reverberated through me were far too overwhelming to translate into coherent words. The flickering of the hospital's lights haunted me as he gazed past me, searching. "I need to get to her," he said, determined but lost. "You should have told me." "Please, Dad," I pleaded, tears threatening to spill. "We don't have time for this. We need to stick together." A lump formed in my throat, lodged tightly against the fear that was steadily climbing higher. The weight of unspoken words hovered painfully between us. Memories of fights and distance filled the air, but none of it mattered right now. All that mattered was navigating the storm that loomed ahead. As the crowd churned, an unsettling tension lingered beneath the surface like the calm before a tempest. My gaze flicked back to Nurse Carla, who was slumped against the lamppost, her breath coming in jagged gasps. "They need to get her back in there," I murmured, half noticing she was struggling to stay conscious. Dad followed my gaze and rushed forward without hesitation. "No! Carla, stay with us," he commanded, pressing a cloth against the gaping wound on her arm. His old instincts, the ones that once kept our family afloat in the chaos of my mom's health, flickered back to life. For all the years apart, he was still there, instinctively caring for those in need. Watching him work his magic gave me a sense of comfort amidst the chaos. I turned back toward the hospital, hope and dread twisting together in a dark dance. In this shattered moment, a part of me wished for the courage to speak my fears out loud. What if my mistake had set off a chain reaction far beyond anything I had imagined? Just as I contemplated this, a sharp cry erupted from the crowd, pulling everyone's attention. Their eyes, wide and frantic, turned toward two officers bursting through the throng, urgency etched into their every movement. "Everyone, please step back," one shouted, shoving through, his hands gesturing emphatically. "What now?" I whispered, feeling the tension in the air run cold. And then, I noticed him, a figure dragging out from the depths of my memories. Max, a childhood friend who had once been my anchor before life swept us apart. He stood at the edge, eyebrows knitted in confusion as he sought to understand the unfolding situation. Why was he here, and why did I feel a warmth upon seeing his familiar face? "Hey!" he called out, rushing forward as he reached me, concern radiating from his presence. "What's going on?" I heard screams. I opened my mouth to respond but paused, caught off guard by his unexpected kindness. "My mom," I stammered. "She's inside, and they're saying there was an incident." "Your mom? Where?" He seemed to read the distress in my eyes, and without waiting for a response, he joined my father at Nurse Carla's side. His determination surged through the chaos like a powerful undercurrent. Together they assessed the situation. It was both heartwarming and surreal to see my past intertwined with my present, and yet fear coursed through me relentlessly, binding my stomach in knots. But as they tended to Carla and tried to shout for someone from the hospital, the word explosion ignited a new wave of panic. It echoed a visceral tremor that rippled through my thoughts. What had I done? Would Mom be okay? I withdrew into myself, the noise of the outside world fading as I focused on my heart racing with hope and despair, and then it happened. An explosion of sound erupted, following by a low rumbling, as if the very ground beneath us groaned in agony. Laughter and cries turned to gasps of horror, and I could feel the weight of every unspoken fear coil tightly around my chest. "Get down!" someone yelled, and suddenly, something heavy crashed, obscuring my view of the hospital's entrance as debris flew, launching sparks of panic through the crowd. A looming cloud of smoke billowed forth, swirling like dark tendrils, and I turned to my father and Max, eyes wide with shock, searching for an anchor as everything spiraled into chaos once more. "Move!" my father shouted, and as we started to step away, a looming realization settled over me. What about Mom? In that instant, I realized I didn't just fear for her safety. I feared that my simple mistake might lead to consequences far more dire than I had ever prepared for. The weight of this revelation shattered my breath, and as the voices around me faded into a dull roar, I grasped for hope amidst the encroaching darkness. What had I set in motion? Would I ever be able to save her, or was I too late? And hidden within the smoke, There was the looming specter of fate waiting to deliver its verdict. My heart thundered with dread as the chilling questions spiraled. Could bravery emerge from the ashes of despair, or would we forever be haunted by what lay beyond that hospital door? I watched the smoke curl towards the stars, dark and ominous like a prophecy foretold. The noise morphed around me, muffled as if I were submerged in a world where time moved differently, where the delay of seconds tricked my mind into fearing hours. My heart hammered furiously in my chest, drowning out my thoughts as adrenaline surged through my veins. Dad! We have to get her! I screamed, my voice slicing through the chaos like a knife, desperation seeping into every syllable. My father's gaze met mine, his eyes mirroring my fear but tempered by an iron resolve. Stay here with Carla, he insisted, gripping my arm with a strength that belied his worry. They'll find a way inside. His urgency crackled in the air, igniting something within me. The decision felt monumental. Should I stay with Carla, exposed and vulnerable, or take the risk and chase my father back towards the spiraling disaster? The line cutting through my choices was drawn by an unyielding love for my mother, the nagging thought that leaving might mean saying goodbye. Max! I called, trying to latch on to any bit of support. What should we do? We can't just leave them. He looked at me, as if remembering the laughter we once shared in carefree afternoons, the friendships suspended in the simplicity of childhood. We can't, he agreed, his brow furrowing with fierce determination. Well, wait for them to get everyone out. Just keep your head down. But the ache in my chest festered. What if they don't come out? What if? The unsaid words wrapped around me, stifling my breath. No! Max interrupted, gripping my shoulder with a fierce intensity. We can't think that way. Your mom needs you to believe. There was something in the way he said it, a thread of hope woven through despair, that grabbed my heart. With one affirmative squeeze of my hand, a flicker ignited within me, swaying me from the brink of pure panic. I was not alone. Just then, a bystander, a frail older woman, staggered toward us, her wide eyes filled with terror. They said it was the generator. The backup. They were rushing to fix it when it exploded. Her trembling hands clasped a rosary that rattled like loose change against her palms. I saw them go in. I tried to help them, rising dread coiled tighter around my throat. My mom was in that hospital, directly in harm's way, and now this pure chaos. Is anyone inside? I managed to mutter, shock dousing my ability to grasp reality. Rumor is they're still getting people out, the woman gasped, her fear dissipating a bit as she clung to my shoulder. We can't lose hope. Hope. Such a simple yet weighty word, clinging precariously to existence amidst fury and despair. My chest trembled as I fought against the tide of fear that clung to my thoughts, reluctant to yield. I turned to see my father emerge through the debris-strewn cloud, his silhouette barely discernible, but quickly a pair of paramedics rushed to him, their movements frantic. I strained to hear his words, "We need to get in. There are still people in there." Waves of frustration washed over me, fueled by unfiltered worry. "No! Dad!" I shouted, terrified he wouldn't return. Just then, through the haze, a flicker of light caught my eye, one tiny sentiment of clarity amid the swirling shadows. A figure emerged from the wreckage, arms outstretched, a nurse, her scrubs muddy but still clinging to hope. "Please!" I yelled, rushing towards her. "My mom! She's in there, where is she?" The nurse stopped. Her gaze was exhausted but alive. "We're doing everything we can. People survived. We're trying to get them out," she said, panting as she steadied herself. "You have to believe, she could still be safe." As she sprinted back towards the smoke-covered entrance, the warmth of an unfamiliar emotion began to sweep over me, gratitude, enhanced by the sheer will of survival swirling around us. It felt oddly reassuring, nestled deep within the chaos. If strangers could endure this, so could I. But as I turned back toward the scene, a heavy realization seized my heart. I had been tethered to my past, haunted by echoes of my mother's struggles and my late father's fading voice. It had all led me to this moment, an overwhelming desire to protect, but equally to confront what had been broken between us. "Stay with me, Max," I urged, the substance of our shared past becoming a lifeline as fear washed over me anew. "We need to stay strong. For them." In that instant, a resounding roar rippled through the world, the hospital alarm blaring ominously, but it soon morphed into the sound of sirens, guiding hope onto the cobbled pathways. Yet with every ringing echo, I couldn't shake the sensation that time was slipping through my fingers. And then, among the shouts and cries, I heard Ida's frantic cry breaking through the noise. "Help! Over here!" I turned my head towards the hospital's entrance, my heart racing as I peered through the debris. Hope clung to me as I willed myself to believe, wishing fervently that one of those voices could be my mother's. The darkness of uncertainty began closing in, threatening to swallow me whole, but there, in that moment, I dared to imagine what life could be after this night. In the midst of the chaos, I gripped Max's hand tighter as a voice in the crowd screamed again. A wave of silence washed over the noise, holding my breath captive as realization crashed through me like a tempest. What if that voice belonged to someone I feared? Beneath the echoes of despair, fear whispered a haunting question: had I truly wrought a disaster of unimagined proportions, and was this just the beginning of our painful reckoning? The air was thick and acrid, a suffocating mixture of smoke and fear. My heart waged war against the memory of my mother's laughter, its echo growing fainter with every agonizing second. I felt suspended in time, every breath pulling me deeper into a valley of despair that I couldn't escape. Yet, amid that abyss, the unwavering grip of Max's hand reminded me that I was not alone. "Stay with me," I whispered, barely able to keep the tremor from my voice. Somehow, I believed him. The frail warmth that pulsed through our clasped fingers felt like a promise, a lifeline tethered to the hope that still flickered somewhere beyond the thickening darkness. The crowd surged as another group of paramedics rushed past, their expressions a blend of urgency and anguish. My chest constricted. I had lost count of how many souls were still trapped inside. The image of my mother flashed in my mind, a gentle smile, arms open beckoning me back to a place of safety. What if that smile was lost forever in this tangled nightmare? The thought struck like a blade, and I pushed it aside, refusing to give in to hopelessness. "Max!" I called out, the desperation pulling at my throat. "Do you think we can help?" The pleading in my voice felt unyielding, and yet I could see the dawning doubt in his eyes. In his gaze, an echo of my own fear, a mirrored reflection of uncertainty. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice strained, barely concealing his horror. "We can't go in there. It's too dangerous. You heard the nurse," I countered, a surge of indignation quelling my fear. "People survived." "If there's a chance." Suddenly, the world around us shifted, a collective gasp rippling through the crowd as a fireman emerged, cradling the lifeless form of a young woman. I felt my blood turn to ice, the warmth of our clasped hands threatening to slip away. This was not a moment of salvation. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of life. No, I whispered, the words scraping against my throat. "Not another." The air felt heavy with grief and betrayal, an unbearable weight threatening to crush me. "Max, we have to do something," I urged him, searching for any flicker of understanding. But his eyes had darkened, and I could almost see the quiet turmoil within him. "I can't lose her," I said, the tremor in my voice now mingling with anger. "Staying here is not going to help anyone," he pleaded. "The firemen know what they're doing. They can get them out. We can't put ourselves in danger, too." For a moment, I felt like the world was spinning out of control, caught in a cyclone of despair and desperation. At that moment, the crowd seemed to dissolve, the chaos of flashing lights and sirens fading into a blurred backdrop against which my thoughts spiraled. Was waiting an act of bravery, or was it just another form of passive despair? As I stood there wavering, a voice cut through my hazy, a voice filled with unmistakable grit. "Is anyone here a trained medical professional?" It was a mixture of command and urgency, drawing my gaze to a man standing nearby, his fists clenched, looking lost among the desperate faces. "We need more hands." "Anyone?" The moment hung delicately, laden with possibility. I took a deep breath, wrestling against the suffocating doubt that threatened to drown me. In that instant, amid the despair, I felt a spark ignite within me, a call to arms that I can help. I shouted, the words bursting forth as I disentangled my fingers from Max's. I'm a volunteer at the clinic. I can do something. Wait. Max grasped my arm, panic etched on his face. What if something happens? What if they can't find your mom? You'll regret going in. Regret is seeing them sent away. I shot back, my voice laced with urgency. I'd rather try and fail than to sit here and wonder what could have been. The fireman caught my gaze, tearing the moment of wavering resolve. We need anyone with knowledge of triage. I can show you where to go. With a final look back at Max, whose eyes sparkled with frustration, I pushed through the throng, adrenaline coursing through my veins. My heart raced, both in terror and hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could make a difference. I could find a way to help someone, anyone. As I dodged debris and maneuvered through the crowd, I was filled with determination, but a fragment of anxiety clawed at my subconscious. What if I couldn't hold up my end of the promise? The fireman led me to a makeshift command center, where chaos reigned supreme with shouts of command and cries of anguish. I'm with you, I insisted, my breath heavy but my spirit alive, ready to embrace the uncertainty of the decision I'd made. Then, out of the corner of my eye, something shimmered amidst the rubbly of fabric peeking through, bright and iridescent against the ash-stained remnants. My heart stuttered in my chest, a dread-laden whisper creeping into my thoughts. It bore the unmistakable insignia of the hospital, me mother's hospital, and the sickening realization clawed at my insides. I felt the ground drop from beneath me as the weight of possibility threatened to suffocate me. Could it really be hers? I found myself rooted to the spot, staring in horror, dread weaving through every thought. My world was narrowing, closing in on the fabric nestled in the wreckage, a tangible sign of what I might lose. Help! The guttural plea resonated again, breaking through my mounting panic, and in that heartbeat, I recognized the voice. It was unmistakable, me mother's voice rising through the turmoil. Against the backdrop of chaos, I was hit with a brutal clarity. Hope flared brightly, but so did the reality of the path I had chosen. I was on the brink of uncovering either a miracle or the deepest sorrow imaginable. With heart pounding, I turned fully towards the horror, ready to confront what lay ahead, unwilling to bow down before despair, propelled by the singular truth that I would not abandon love when it was on the line. I propelled myself forward, drinking in the fire of determination, unaware of what awaited me beyond the veil of destruction. The air was still thick with smoke as I pushed forward, my heart thrumming an erratic rhythm in my chest. Each step felt heavy, as if I were wading through molasses, a potent mix of fear, determination, and the flickering hope that my mother was still alive. As I approached the edge of the devastation, other responders moved around me like shadows, their faces set with grim resolve. Over here! The fireman's voice shot through the noise, guiding me further into chaos. An anxious knot tightened in my stomach. Still, I could hear her voice, urging me on with vivid clarity. Was it real? Or was my mind playing tricks on me amidst all this despair? Another paramedic rushed past, carrying a child wrapped in a blanket, unresponsive. My heart seized. The sight sent a wave of nausea coursing through me. I remembered my mother teaching me basic first aid, how she always insisted on the importance of helping those in need. It was practically a creed for her. Focus! I whispered under my breath, wrestling with the panic threatening to wash over me. With determination, I found my footing and followed the fireman to where he gestured, my pulse hammering in my ears. Just over this debris, he shouted, and my heart jumped. The area was littered with debris, smoldering remnants of what had once been a shelter of laughter and love. I stepped hesitantly onto the rubble, trusting that my resolve would carry me through, aflame against the coming night. As I climbed, I could see more of the rescue teams working frantically, their voices mixing into a cacophony of commands. I spotted a woman, a rescuer dressed in soot-streaked gear, applying pressure to a man's leg with a severe fracture. The sharp sounds of metal clashing against metal echoed through the air. But amid that chaos, A small flicker of kindness caught my eye. A firefighter handed a tissue to a crying child, their mother safely on a stretcher nearby, gently reassuring her with a steady voice. I wanted to harness that hope. I could channel it into something, anything. Managing to reach my goal, I found myself at a makeshift triage where a doctor was checking the vitals of the latest influx of victims. A steady stream of bodies was the stark reminder of our fragility, their lifeblood flowing as freely as the tears rolling down my cheeks. "Any volunteers here?" the doctor called, his intensity palpable. It rang like the clanging of a church bell in my ears. I opened my mouth to respond but was overtaken by thoughts of my mother. Would she be one of these victims? I shook my head to clear the fog but found my legs momentarily paralyzed. "Ma'am!" A paramedic broke my reverie. "We need your assistance." Quickly, without hesitating, I threw myself into the fray, my hands shaking slightly but my resolve solidifying with each task I undertook. As I worked, I wanted to believe that I was making some small difference, no matter how minimal. I tended to cuts and scrapes, applied bandages to bleeding limbs. With every act of care, a part of me cried out for the safety of my mother. Anyone in the building who knows patients? They might need information. A voice echoed nearby, and chills crept up my spine. This could be a moment of truth, the chance to find her. Suddenly, a flutter of hope burst within me, urging me forward. "Wait. I stumbled over my words, desperate to say what would allow me to search through the pandemonium. "I know the area. I might know where patients are," I managed to speak, but it came out as a whisper. "Wonderful." The doctor nodded, barely pausing. "We need someone to direct the team. You can help retrieve information from the clinic records." My pulse quickened. Yes, I can do that." The moment carried weight, my heart fierce with intent. Yet still, a sinking thought crept in. Will it even matter? With renewed purpose, I jogged back through the chaos. As I reached the structure that had housed my mother's laughter, the memories surged forward, a flurry of sunshine in a clouded sky. Needles of hope and despair clashed within as I fumbled for the door handle. It swung open easily, and I forced myself through the entry. The sight was overwhelming, a stark contrast of brightness from the windows and the dust-clouded air within. "Somebody!" I called, my voice hoarse against the volume of grief that echoed in my head. "Is anyone in here?" Only silence greeted me, but not for long. Just then, among the rubble of a fallen file cabinet, I heard its faintest sound, like a whispering prayer. "Help, I need help." My body lit up with an electric surge of urgency. I waded through debris, my heart racing as I shouted again, "I'm coming." The voice became clearer, and I rushed toward its origin without thought of my own safety. Each moment stretched out with the agonizing pull of dread, fear demanding to take over, but determination roared louder. There, beneath the wreckage, a figure lay crumpled, her dark hair spread out like a halo on the floor. My breath caught. It was a woman, and the resemblance was undeniable, the curve of her cheek, the delicate line of her brow. "Mom?" The name slipped from my lips like a confession, the sound caught somewhere between hope and horror. As I reached to move the debris, time froze, the world held its breath. I could feel the chill of reality creeping in, threatening to shatter the fleeting moment of hope. With my fingers trembling, I pulled away the heavy beam, revealing her face. I met her gaze, her eyes fluttering open with an almost ethereal light, but the life within them seemed faint, fading. "Help me," she breathed, barely a whisper. "I can't," and in that heartbeat, I grasped the weight of the moment. In the throes of trauma, I felt the tender thread of love connecting us surge with new urgency, but alongside it, a crippling fear clung to my heart like ivy. I was right on the precipice of everything I had so fiercely fought for, yet nothing could prepare me for the depths of despair that awaited. Would I lose her again before I had the chance to save her? The question hung in the air as the world around me blurred into quiet, the storm of chaos fading to nothing in that moment of undeniable truth. The echo of my mother's voice filled the air around us, fragile and desperate. I could feel the weight of her words pressing against my chest, anchoring me in that dark swirl of chaos. She needed me, and yet I felt like a child lost at sea, dwarfed by the depth of the reality before me. I had fought my way through desolation only to confront what might be my greatest nightmare. "Mom, just hold on," I whispered, panic coated thickly in the air between us. I set my jaw, determination coursing through my veins like a wildfire. With crude efficiency, I pushed aside the remnants of the fallen cabinet, the wood splintering against the weight of my fear and desperation. This was not how it was supposed to be. I was supposed to be the one caring for her, and yet here I stood, powerless. "Please don't fade away," I begged, tears blurring my vision. I brushed my fingers against her cheek, instinctively searching for warmth and life. She was so still, held captive by the debris that buried so much more than just her body. "I'll get you out," I stammered, vowing to summon all the strength I had within me. But guilt tethered me to the ground, reminding me that I hadn't been there to protect her. The thought creased my heart, pulling at the fragile sinews of remorse woven through my spirit. As I grasped a length of metal that pinned her leg, my hands trembled. If I failed to do this right, I would be signing her death sentence. A deep breath steadied me, a soft reminder of her voice, coaxing that I was stronger than I believed. "Hold on, Mom. You're going to be okay," I said, more to convince myself than her. I focused on the crowd outside, memories of laughter and shared moments flooding back to bolster my resolve. Each laugh, each holiday spent together, the echo of her voice in my mind served as a balm against the aching reality that might unfold. "You need to remember what I taught you," she murmured, barely audible. Those words, some memory rose within me, embers igniting anew. She was depending on me, just as she always had. If I failed, what would become of her, of us? Summoning every ounce of courage, I heaved against the metal, muscles screaming under the strain. It felt as if the world had tilted, time suspending itself in a cruel intonation, and in that breath, for an eternity, I was ensnared by both hope and dread. I could almost believe it could work. But then, the wrenching sound of creaking metal echoed through the air, harsh like a gunshot. The beam shifted more than I anticipated, and the earth trembled beneath us. It was as if the universe wanted to swallow us both whole. In that split second, she gasped. "No!" I yelled, fear rising like bile in my throat as I lunged, catching the edge of the beam just in time. But it was heavier than I was prepared for, the oxygen sucked away by the weight of my despair. "Please! Just a little longer!" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. My memories of her cradled the edges of my consciousness, flickering like the remnants of a dream. "Just a little longer, Mom," and then, unexpectedly, a voice pierced the dense fog surrounding us. "I'm coming!" A young man appeared through the chaos, his face painted with soot and determination. He was an off-duty firefighter, and I recognized the spark of courage in his eyes alight amidst the shadows. "Help me!" I pleaded, and without hesitation, he joined me, hoisting the metal beam as if it held the weight of the world. Together, we fought against the constraints of fate, every heave accompanied by our collective breath. It was a synchronized dance of urgency, a perfect rhythm born of the stillness between despair and hope. As the beam finally shifted enough to free her leg, I inhaled sharply, tears streaming down my cheeks, a hot rush of relief washing over me. She was still here, but she looked pale and had begun to drift away again. The man knelt beside me. Assess her condition. He wasn't just an ally. He became my lifeline, grounding me when the storm inside threatened to spin everything out of control. I fumbled, placing my fingers against her wrist, feeling for a pulse. What? If it was weak? What if? I shoved the thoughts aside and forced myself to focus. "Mom, stay with me. I need you." The air tasted of ash and sorrow, but I refused to relent. And then, something changed. I could feel a crushing weight shifting over my heart. A new fear that had lain dormant erupted, mingling with the inkling of joy that we had done it. But then, just as I was about to break free of the specter of despair, I heard the creeping sound of whispering chaos returning, and this time it was louder than before. A flash of light boomed somewhere above us, followed by a piercing howl. The ground trembled beneath us violently, and then the scream of crashing debris filled the air. Without warning, the ceiling above began to cave, enormous blocks of concrete tumbling dangerously above us. "Get out! Now!" the firefighter shouted, panic igniting like wildfire. But all I could do was stare at my mother, the woman who had given me life, lost in a haze between reality and the unreachable brink. I grasped her hand tightly, my heart racing in tandem with the tumbling stones, but still uncertainty loomed like a specter on the threshold. I couldn't leave her. I wouldn't. Mom, please hold on. My voice rose above the chaos, and just as I felt hope slip through my fingers like grains of sand, I realized this was not the time for doubt. I had to escape, split between two worlds, two choices. Time stretched momentarily, teetering on the edge of what could be irrevocably lost. Did I stay, risking everything for a love that was already fractured? Or did I flee, taking her with me through the unforgiving world that anticipated my next move? And with one last agonizing glance at the approaching shadows, I made my choice. The cacophony around us grew deafening, an ominous serenade of collapsing walls and shattered dreams. The firemen's urgent cries pierced through the chaos like a lifeline, but they were swallowed almost immediately by the roar of destruction. It was almost as if the world was trying to swallow me whole, to extinguish the flickering flame of hope that remained. With every fiber of my being, I clung to my mother's hand. It was the anchor renewing my strength, even as the ground lurched beneath me. But then her fingers slipped against mine, a featherweight tremor that sent panic surging through me. I leaned over her, brushing her hair back from her face. Please, Mom, just wake up. The firefighter, his brows slicked with sweat, gripped my shoulder, forcing me to look into his eyes. We need to move. Now. I can't hold this up much longer. In that moment, I felt the tightening grip of fear in my chest. Guilt twisted dangerously into the pit of my stomach, but it was more than that. It was a violent storm of love and past regrets threatening to pull me under. The weight of my choice loomed large, but so did the love I felt for her, a love that begged me to save us both. Without a further glance back at the encroaching doom, I took a deep breath, feeling the thrum of life surrounding me, and pressed my forehead against my mother's. I won't leave you. I promised. An unexpected warmth spread through my fingers as I entwined them with hers, and against all reason, I felt a flicker of her return. My heart raced between panic and a blooming hope that dared to defy the odds, yearning to ignite memories of laughter and life's simple joys. Just hold on. I yelled, my voice cutting through the chaos, a lifeline thrown blindly into turbulent waters. With a surge of adrenaline, I managed to pull her closer. This way. The firefighter urged, voice raised against the din. Lean on me. Just as I was about to push through the grasping shadows, a loud crack echoed above us, a menacing reminder of our mortal danger. Get her! I shouted, pushing my mother into the firefighter's arms and vaulting over his shoulder. What about you? He yelled, urgency burning in his eyes, forcing me to confront the undeniable truth. If I let go, I might never recover what little life remained in this moment. Just go! I cried out, rallying my determination to wrestle against the dark tide of despair filling the space around us. Then everything happened in a blurry scream swallowed by the chaos. A flicker of orange light slashing through the air, and a moment too prolonged as I felt the dust and despair begin to overwhelm me. I grasped my mother's hand as tightly as I could. The warmth of her skin was rapidly fading, and fear clawed at my heart like a feral beast. In an absolute and terrible moment, the ground lurched violently beneath us, and I was thrown back, my body hitting the ground hard. My breath exploded from my lungs, the world turning chaotic and blinding in the haze of dust and debris. Mom! I cried, scrambling to stand as the walls shifted and creaked around me. The firefighter steadied me, forcing me to move again. You have to help me. Using my last reserves of strength, I surged forward to find her, the remnants of hope brightening my vision even as the darkness seeped into my heart. But as I reached for her, I felt something inside me snap. An unbearable realization crashed over me like an ocean wave. She was trapped again, crushed beneath the crashing debris, her figure barely visible amidst the rubble. I felt the solitude of despair wrap its cold fingers around my throat like a noose. Don't leave me! I screamed, my voice raw with anguish as I gasped for air, feeling the walls close in. The weight of hopelessness crashed against me, leaving behind a frantic sense of loss, And then, through the haze of despair, the firefighter's voice rang clear, a bright sound against the dark. I need you to guide me. Where is she? Just right there. I pointed, my heart hammering against my chest, overwhelmed by the compounding fear of losing her. Please, please hurry. He bolted toward her, and something deep within me shifted. In that desperation, as I watched him dig through the rubble, I felt an unexpected spark of courage ignite against that darkened backdrop of hopelessness, filling me like a rush of fresh air. Stay with me, I whispered, kneeling beside my mother. I'm right here. But uncertainty still haunted the edges of my mind. The same cycles of guilt and torment began to coil again within me. What had I done? Had I failed her when she needed me most? Through the dust and debris, time seemed to stretch infinitely each passing second, a tormenting loop that throbbed heavier than the last. I closed my eyes and thought back to those sunlit afternoons spent in the garden, laughter blooming in the air, her eyes lighting up the world around us. I could almost hear her voice. I'm here, I whispered. I'm not giving up on you. And then, as suddenly as the shadows overhead had begun dancing, I felt the ground tremble once more. My heart stopped, paralyzed by a terrifying jolt of awareness. Run! The firefighter yelled suddenly, grabbing my arm and tugging me upwards. I barely caught a glimpse of the crumbling world around us in that instant. All that held sway over me was the rush of panic coursing through my veins and the burning need to protect her. But as I stumbled after him, I glanced back for one last look at my mother, the woman who had fought so hard for me, and the frantic cries of the people outside twisted in my gut, a tangible reminder of the pain she endured. The ceiling above emitted a dreadful groan, sending a cascade of broken debris tumbling closer. And just as I turned to flee, my breath caught in my throat. I saw my mother, her eyes fluttering open, the frail line of hope gleaming bright against the despair surrounding us. Mom! I gasped, but before I could reach her, the ground buckled, vaulting me forward. Go! She screamed, her voice strained in unimaginable strength cracking through the chaos. Just go! I love you! A gut-wrenching moment of realization gripped me as I watched the darkness close in on her. I was paralyzed by the enormity of its own choice stood between us, and everything had changed in a heartbeat. Heart pounding against my ribs, I saw my laughter-filled memories flash in front of my eyes as I was forced to either reach for her or for life outside. But her voice lingered still, an ardent fire igniting the troubled waters of my heart, begging me to live no matter the price. And with my world collapsing as I stood at the edge of my choice, I made one last glance back. I had not anticipated the revelation that awaited me, and just when I thought I was ready to move on, I saw it. A piece of evidence lying amid the wreckage that shattered everything I had believed. Something, a moment that would change everything, sparked unexpectedly within that frail chaos. And as I took a trembling breath and turned away for the last time, I felt the tears fall. A bittersweet mixture of grief and newfound strength surged through me. My heart ached with an overwhelming love, and yet that revelation clung to me, igniting a new path in the journey before me, one lined with unexpected truth and the fragility of hope. I didn't know then, but that moment would mark the turning point in an emotional fight that held far greater stakes than my heart was prepared to bear. The world outside was a cacophony of sirens and cries, a stark contrast to the dreadful stillness that loomed inside the shattered building. Each truck that roared past felt like a reminder of the lives still out there, a heartbeat I could hear, yet felt so disconnected from. In that moment, my heart remained entangled in the remnants of what I had lost. I stumbled through the rubble, adrenaline flooding through me like wildfire. But within the chaos erupted a new tempest, a swirling mix of guilt and sorrow that clawed at me from the inside. I had left her, my mother, begging me to live, pleading with more strength than I had ever seen. But was survival worth the price of her absence? The realization hinged precariously between breath and lifeline, as I clutched that pang of guilt close, trembling in its enormity. Are you okay? The firefighter's voice pierced through my fog, his eyes searching mine for signs of life amidst my turmoil. Not really, I breathed out, my voice shaking. Stay with me, he urged, squeezing my shoulder. We're going to get you out of here. I promised I could see the concern in his eyes, a flicker of humanity in the face of darkness. It was a small thing, a moment of kindness that cut through my despair like a beam of sunlight, and yet it felt almost out of place against the backdrop of devastation. "Where's my mother?" I managed to choke out, each syllable heavy with lingering dread. Against the chaos surrounding us, his lips tightened, unreadable in their urgency. "Well, find her. They're still searching. I need you to trust me." As we emerged into the open air, the reality of our survival began to settle in like a heavy weight upon my shoulders. Paramedics rushed past, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke and despair. I felt lost among the frantic energy of the responders, my heart racing with each pulse of unanswered questions. "Please find her," I whispered, a mantra that began to form as hope flickered dimly behind tightly shut eyelids. "Please just bring her back to me." Amid the frantic movement, a warmth brushed against my sleeve. A small girl, not older than 6, reached out hesitantly, her dirty face streaked with tears. The sheer vulnerability in her eyes mirrored my own, and I crouched instinctively to meet her gaze. "Are you okay?" I asked gently, forcing myself to soften amidst the storm brewing within. "I can't find my brother," she said in a small voice, looking left and right, her tiny hands trembling. That was almost too much for me to bear. A flicker of my own pain mirrored in her, a shared wound that connected us instantaneously. "I'm sure he's out there, just like your mom and dad. He's going to be okay," I assured her, fighting against the anxiety creeping up my throat. As I reached for her hand, the firefighter's voice pulled me away from the moment, a chorus of urgency weaving through my scattered thoughts. "We're moving to safer ground. You need to stay together." A part of me wanted nothing more than to run to search for any sign of my mother and to tell this innocent child that it would be all right. But somehow, I understood, to show this girl that kindness still existed, I needed to be strong enough for the both of us. I held her hand tightly as we made our way toward a safe zone. With each passing moment, I felt the connections we forged in that small act of compassion solidifying my resolve. If there was a flicker of bravery in a child lost amidst chaos, then perhaps there was still hope for the adults left trembling in the wake of catastrophe. But just as we reached the perimeter where the paramedics were organizing, a loud crash echoed from behind us, a sound that sent a collective shiver through the crowd gathered around us. In the chaos, I turned sharply towards the sound, my heart hammering wildly. "What was that?" I asked, panic surging within me, the fear of more destruction weighing heavily on my heart. The firefighter's brow furrowed, a flash of something dark passing through his eyes. "Stay behind me. I need to check." "Wait!" I yelled, but he was already moving, the urgency and drive radiating off him as he headed back into the fading shadows. "Don't leave me!" I shouted after him, dread curling like smoke in my chest. But he was just a silhouette against the wreckage, one among many whose lives were still deeply intertwined with the aftermath of what had happened. Then the world shifted again. It felt like everything fell into slow motion. A whisper, a voice in the back of my mind, curled around me like a vine, reminding me of my mother's voice. "Be brave." In that moment, all I could think was how to respond to that parallel yearning. I had abandoned her when she needed me most, but here, among the chaos, the cries, the warmth, and the unwavering courage of others, perhaps there was still a chance for me to act. And like an ember reigniting a flame, that little girl squeezed my hand tighter. I looked down at her, realizing I was tethered, not just to her, but to a greater quest unfolding right before my eyes. My heart began to drum relentlessly against my ribs, fueled by an overwhelming sense of purpose. I needed to find a way to fight back against the dark. Suddenly, a voice cut through the din, shrieking my name. "Hey! Come here!" I turned to see a figure tearing through the crowd, someone I recognized but hadn't expected to see. The sight of him sent a surge of unexpected emotions scorching through me, a mixture of anger, confusion, and inexplicable longing. "Why are you here?" I stammered, caught off guard as he charged toward me, determination etched across his face. But as his expression twisted with urgency, I realized the answer might just lead to an ending I never imagined. "We need to talk now." "About what?" I shouted, the desperate urge for clarity battling against the onslaught of uncertainty gripping me. About your mother, he hesitated, panting as the shadows of our past pressed heavily around us. Every fiber of my being tensed, poised for whatever revelation waited to unravel. A part of me hoped it was the truth, the kind that could restore my fragmented heart, yet another, an echo of horrifying dread, threatened to suffocate me. In the midst of our collapse, the moment drew taut, holding my breath hostage as I took a step closer, the surge of hope and fear twining pitifully in my gut. Tell me! My voice, steady despite the tremor inside, pushed forward, desperate to grasp hold of the fragile threads of a family I feared were shattered forever. And as the world bowed out around us, destiny lingered on that moment's edge, waiting for the truth to unfold in its relentless grasp. The world outside was a cacophony of continued chaos as I stood rooted, my heart racing wildly in my chest. The familiar figure approaching me was caught in the dizzying swirl of anger and longing, ghosting across the gaps of our past. Max, my childhood friend, my once inseparable ally, now caught on the thorns of memory, had traversed the storm to reach me. About your mother, he panted, shock and concern dawning on his features, and suddenly the air felt heavy and stifling, pregnant with unspoken truths that begged to be shared. It was a threadbare tether in a tempest, fragile yet filled with an incomprehensible weight. Something deep inside me trembled at the thought of the impending revelation. I fought against the rising tide of grief clawing at my heart, the fear of what I might uncover clawing at my throat like a serpent. Just tell me, I demanded, each syllable laced with urgency. My breath felt shallow, the heat of desperation coursing through me, begging to understand if there still existed a possibility of reunion, of healing. As he drew closer, concern washed over his face. There are rumors circulating, and I don't want you to lose hope. His tone was earnest enough to send a flicker of hope igniting within the depths of despair. I heard they're still bringing people out. They just found more survivors. A rush of warmth flooded through me, but I was wary. I could feel the intricacies of my heart twisting under the pressure of every past wound that had never truly healed. We had fought battles in silence, each held captive by our burdens, yet even within that plight, the echoes of our fractured history found their way into our conversation. Max, if I lose her, I couldn't finish the thought, the words crashing into silence as the mere idea threatened to swallow me whole. I can't. I won't lose her. His gaze softened, a fleeting hint of understanding dancing in the depths of his eyes. That's why we have to find her. She wouldn't want you wallowing like this, drowning in the fear. He reached for my hand and squeezed it tightly. In that moment of connection, my heart gripped tightly with a yearning I hadn't realized existed, a yearning for the past, for courage, for hope. Stay close to me, he instructed, and I nodded, fortified by the tether of companionship and the flicker of hope that still danced amidst our chaos. Together we carved through the tumult, the dust swirling like ghosts of our former selves. If she's in there, well, find her, Max urged, the grit in his voice fueling my resolve. The sound of sirens faded into the background as we hurried toward the edge of the building where chaos continued to ensue, men and women in uniform traversing the wreckage, their faces strained yet focused. Dread gnawed at my gut, trailing an insidious doubt. What if we were too late? Every second counts, I murmured, the words slithering from my lips, choking on the implications of my admission. I couldn't afford to lose sight of hope when it was teetering precariously at the cliff of despair. And just then, something within shifted. A memory flooded back, one I had associated with my mother's laughter consumed by sunshine. I remember her shirt, I stammered, recalling the vivid patterned fabric, the one she had worn last, the one she had promised to wear every time I brought her flowers. It has to be somewhere. Yeah, Max encouraged, his heartbeat echoing beside mine as we searched amidst the detritus. There, intertwined in the destruction, was the vibrant fabric I had pictured. The unmistakable shade clung to the remnants of despair, bursting forth like hope-defying darkness. I rushed forward with fleeting clarity, choking on a mixture of realization and the tumult blowing around us. This is it! I shouted, pulling it free, a wave of unimaginable relief washing over me as I held the piece of her mother clutched tightly against my chest. She's here! She still believes! The realization shifted something inside me like the first breath of air after being submerged in darkness, and finally, I believed we could reach her. But like a momentary flicker of light, the reality of my mother's absence loomed heavy. I had to find her. I had to witness her strength and allow it to weave through my own soul once more. I would face her, let our shared strength flourish again, strong against the tides of uncertainty. Come on! I shouted, rallying my heart as I tugged Max alongside me through the thrumming chaos. The noise intensified, shadows shifting ominously, but I didn't care. I wouldn't look back. I wouldn't lose hope again. As we crossed through the stream of paramedics working feverishly, echoes of voices flooded my mind as I spotted a cluster of red against the sterile walls, nurses tending to the injured, but also the unmistakable sound of pain threading through the air. A gnawing sensation whispered in my mind, pulling me closer, urging, until we finally reached the heart of the devastation, the makeshift medical bay crowded with survivors. There she was, my mother, cradled among weary faces and encircled by those who had paused to capture their breath in the storm of life. The sight of her alone bedazzled me in clarity. Her serene presence cut through the chaos like a beacon. I could barely hold back, every cell in my being urging me forward, ignited with renewed determination. And in their midst, my father stood, a picture of resolve and relief, his eyes desperately scanning until they met mine. It was then that everything shifted. Resentment melted like ice in the summer sun, revealing old wounds but also new resolve. He held her hand tightly. "Mom!" I cried, my voice breaking through, cracking the heaviness around me into shimmering particles of hope. Her head turned slightly, the faintest flicker of recognition crossing her features as her eyes met mine, glistening like a fading star returning to life under the pressure of love not yet spent. "Darling," she murmured, mouth barely parting to form the words, yet the sound tasted sweeter than a bittersweet song, bringing everything rushing home. "Mom!" I rushed into the circle, kneeling beside her, enveloped by a wave of warmth even amidst the chaos. I thought the words choked me. I had thought I might never find her again, thought I would carry the ashes of her absence forever. The stinging realization clawed at my heart, but looking at her, the warmth settled beneath the weight of grief, a healing beginning to bloom anew. "I am here, sweetheart. I never left you." Her hand tightened around mine, and for a moment, the world slowed, suspended in the expression of love shared between us, fragile yet enduring. In that moment, time stretched into a tapestry woven from threads of our past wrapped tightly in the love we had fought so hard to protect. "We made it," I whispered, a silent vow that evoked the memories of